You're doing radio
Yeah, I
in
got my own
Amsterdam?
radio station, RadioFreeAmsterdam.com.
Uh-huh.
That's what I do now. That's my passion.
How much time do you spend over there in the Netherlands?
Much as I can get away with.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It varies. I don't have any work there, so I have to go other places to work.
Uh-huh.
But then I go back there to spend the money. So.
I see. So
I
in
love
Michigan,
it there.
what's the scene like there now these days? There's the
They're
dispensaries
terrified,
opening up.
No, they shut down.
Shut them down?
The Attorney General of the state of Michigan,
Shoot.
William Schuett, General Schuett, was also the guy who, before he was elected Attorney General as a Republican, under the governor we have, was elected on the tough nerd ticket.
Uh-huh.
Well, you can pretty much imagine what a state governed by a tough nerd is going to be like. It's not going to be nothing nice. And this guy
Been
Schuett,
taking over the local city governments.
well, that's part of their plan, yeah, especially those operated by Negroes.
Mm-hmm.
They think the white people know how to do this better because they did so well with our economy. So they like to go in and take over the city under this thing called emergency manager system. And it allows them to void all of their union contracts, declare bankruptcy, get rid of the pensions of the people who had spent all their lives working for these cities, and tell them what to do for the future, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they just averted this in Detroit, but they have an emergency financial board that's going to run the city, which the city had to agree to accept. The only alternative was to accept an emergency manager system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very gruesome, you know. And cities like Detroit and Flint, my hometown, are ruined beyond repair economically. They've been disinvesting in them for about 40 years. It finally reached the fairly well-off suburban ring of white people that surrounds Detroit a couple of years ago, and that's when you start hearing about Detroit. But in the city of Detroit, the real city of Detroit, they did away with the jobs about 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you got at least 2 generations, maybe you could call it 3 generations of people who have never had a job. They don't know what a job is. They don't know anyone who's had a job. No one in their family has had a job. So it's pretty, they're desperate, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the worst possible sort of situation as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And the sick part of it is this is the vanguard of what they're holding up as the model for the rest of not only America,
Schuett's
but
supposed
also,
to be the Republican guru, so to speak.
well, yeah. Well, I started out to say that Schuett led the opposition to the medical marijuana initiative of 2008, and he lost on about a 2-to-1 basis.
Mm-hmm.
But then he was elected in 2010 as part of the Republican backlash to the president administration. So now he uses the Attorney General's office as his focal point for trying to oppose the medical marijuana initiative that was passed. He does things like hold seminars for local law enforcement and prosecutors' offices around the state of Michigan, which then is followed by busts of the dispensaries, like in Traverse City.
Mm-hmm.
They had one of his little, you know, he tries to explain to the local and regional law enforcement people how they can circumvent the Medical Marijuana Act and still bust people and prevent them from having places where people can get their medicine and what have you. See, in Michigan, the marijuana law, the medical marijuana law, recognizes only one sort of relationship, and that is between a patient, a registered patient, and a registered caregiver who can grow for 5 patients. There's no provision in the initiative law that was passed
For dispensary.
for dispensaries or any sort of transfer outside of this model.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's not caretaker to patient relation is regarded as not acceptable by the state authorities. So it's kind of gruesome, you know. They were building a great industry throughout the state with the dispensaries. And then, as you know, they just started raiding them and shutting them down and persecuting people. Like my friend Adam Brook, who organized the Hash Bash for about 20 years. They raided him for marijuana, and then he had some illegal guns in his house, and now he's in prison for 2 years.
In Michigan State Prison.
In Michigan, yeah. So that's one of the side effects of this kind of stuff. That either they shut him down, or they, you know, he was a patient and he was registered, and all his marijuana issues were in order, but for some reason he was a gun nut. You know, so I feel terrible for him.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, I have no guns.
Yeah.
I don't even want guns.
No, I don't believe in them myself. So I know there's an initiative out there right now. It doesn't look like it's going to make the ballot, but Matt Abel is pushing it.
Matt's doing a good job, but yeah, it's just him and the people. They've had a group that's met every Monday.
I met over at their office once about, I don't know, 4 months ago.
Well, they've been doing that every week for months.
Yeah.
And the initiative came out of that, but they don't have the support of
the money people.
People with the big money who help support the medical marijuana initiative, for example.
Right.
And then there's some sort of, I don't know, the dispensary people have their own organization, and they're kind of trying to make a deal with the state legislature on the side, and they aren't really supporting the initiative. So I don't know. I pray for the best. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I started my crusade, as they might say, against the marijuana laws in January of 1965.
How'd you start it then?
I put out a flyer.
And that was in Michigan?
Yes, sir. I received in the mail from New York City a flyer that said, New York Lemar, legalized.
That's Allen Ginsberg's group.
Allen Ginsberg and Ed Sanders.
Yeah.
I got this in the mail one day, and I said, well, that's a great idea. We should have one of these in Detroit. So I went to our mimeograph machine and typed up a stencil and ran off a thing and sent it out and said the first meeting is such and such. We're going to legalize marijuana in Michigan.
Lemar was
that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's still not legal.
I know. Well, we're trying to legalize. I know
thought everything would be done with by 1977.
Sure.
That was my initial outlook.
That's what I thought too back in the late 70s.
Jesus Christ, what's wrong with these people?
It's all about money, power, and economic and political control.
And yeah, they got this police state they built up on our backs. This vast, huge, almost indescribably large police state apparatus.
Yeah.
When you count, well, what's the federal government spending a year now? 18 billion on the war on drugs?
Yeah, I think at least. And growing.
And that doesn't count the states, you see, and which finance their stormtrooper activities by seizing the assets and the products of the marijuana community. And then they buy a battering ram, electronic battering rams, and tanks, and helicopters. Oh, man.
It's hard to believe.
They got it all. Yeah, and then you go beyond the police, and there's the courts, and the drug courts, and the extra prosecutors, and all the extra coppers, and all the narcotics bureaus, and then you got the, you know, the probation officers, the prison industry, the parole industry, and my favorite, the drug treatment industry, which is the most asinine and vicious of the whole thing. My daughter once had this pull over by the side of the road and have a joint. She got busted. So she had to go to rehabilitation for being a marijuana smoker.
Yeah, yeah, like she was
What
hooked.
could you possibly do to combat, you know, what's wrong with that? And the whole thing is it's all based on nothing. It's all like Jake Harris said, they don't have no clothes on, you know. There's nothing wrong with, well, why am I talking to you? I mean, there's nothing wrong with marijuana.
I
The
think
whole
it's
thing is just a
greatest
ridiculous
gift our
misdefinition.
planet's given
When I started in Michigan, it was a narcotic.
Right.
terms of the
Now you
law.
got that law overturned though,
I
right? Your
overturned
case
that law.
ended up in
But I had
having
to-
that declared unconstitutional.
I had to spend 3 years in prison though to do that without an appeal bond.
Right, for only 2 joints.
Yeah. But then.
What happened after they declared the Michigan marijuana law unconstitutional?
Well,
Did
it
the
was an
legislature go right into
interesting-
session to
No,
recreate
no.
the laws, or?
The legislature had already dealt with this issue.
I see.
And they passed a new law reclassifying marijuana as a controlled substance, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I always thought it was more like a spitball. That's what I call a controlled substance, you know. But they redefined it, and the important part was they changed the entire system of penalties.
Uh-huh.
So instead of 20 to life for giving away or selling marijuana, you could only get 4 years maximum. So the legislature passed this law on December 9th of 1971, but the stipulation was that it would go into effect on April 1st, 1972. Well, my case was decided by the Michigan Supreme Court. My case, and I was linked to another case of a guy who was convicted of sales. I was only convicted of possession. So our attorneys linked these 2 cases together. We both won, so they threw out the whole marijuana, the crime, the penalties,
Yeah.
people were released and everything.
We are working on an initiative
But
here in
let me
Oregon.
just
Oh,
finish
go
that.
ahead.
That was on like March 9th or March 12th, I can't remember.
And the new law is going into effect on April 1st.
Yeah, for 3 weeks we had a situation in Michigan where there were no marijuana laws.
Uh-huh. Did you have a little taste of freedom?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. We had an
And that was right when you got out, too.
Well, yeah, 3 months. Yeah. So we would have events where you smoked joints on stage and stuff like that. We took full advantage of this small window. And then when April 1st came in, April Fool's Day, that's when we had the first hash bash.
That's where the first hash bash started. And that's the first.
To thumb our noses at these people and say, you might put this law into effect, but we aren't going to pay any more attention to this one than we did to the much more severe one. If you'll pardon the expression.
You know, we are
So that's what I like about the hash bash, because they have it every year. They just had the 42nd one, I think. 41st,
Yeah.
42nd. I don't count it like good without a calculator, but
been a long time.
a long time every year.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
I think
That started right around your case. You know, we're working on an initiative here in Oregon to completely legalize it, much like Matt Abel's initiative. And we're at about, we only need 87,000 signatures to qualify.
Oh, you're much better
We just
off
tossed
that way.
70,000.
Oh, very
So
good.
we've got
Well,
70,000 we have till
you're
July
way ahead of
6th.
us.
Now, this is
We
a
need
excerpt.
332.
Yeah, well, you've got 10 million people, where Oregon only has 3 million, so.
Yeah, they
But
got
this
a lot
is
more
text
budgets
from
per
our
capita.
initiative. And this is one of the lines, this is the whole thing. It says, whereas the people find that despite misinformation concocted to justify cannabis prohibition, the courts of Alaska, Hawaii, and guess who?
Wow,
Michigan
very good.
have noted Presidential Commission findings that characterize
That's
cannabis.
what I call it, a comparatively harmless euphoria.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even a drug.
No.
It's a weed.
It's a beneficial thing.
And there's the medical part of it,
Yeah, yeah, and the fiber
which
part.
I happen to agree with Dennis Perone. on
All
the
use is
idea that
medical.
all marijuana use is medicinal in America, for sure.
Mhm.
Because we're up against a very sickening social system here. And I know if I couldn't get high every day, I would just dash my head against the wall, because it's so ugly and frustrating. You have to find a way to elevate above it.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out the way to get through it, you know. That's what I look at it anyway.
So you play music.
That's why I started.
You're an MC5. Did you just play a gig, some music here tonight?
Yeah, I just sat in with my friend Reggie Houston
Uh-huh.
and a great pianist named Janice Scroggins. Oh, they were great. So last night Reggie played with me. We played at the Star Theater.
Uh-huh.
And I've known Reggie when we both lived in New Orleans. So I've known him for a long time. As he says, decades. And we finally had a chance to play. I'm a poet, so I set my poems to music. I seek high-level musicians like Lonnie D. Wages, who backed me up 2 nights before that.
All right. So
I can't afford to carry my musicians around with me, so it gives me the opportunity to collaborate with lots of different people.
So you're going to play some gigs. You're going out to Astoria and then up to Seattle.
Correct.
And
Playing some in Astoria Friday. I think we're playing 2 gigs Friday. I don't know who I'm going to be playing with there, but I'm sure it'll be fun.
we'll find somebody.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
So after you're done here next week, are you going back to Michigan or back to
I go
Amsterdam?
back to Detroit just for a week for my daughter's.
I'll be in Detroit on Monday and Tuesday, the 30th and 1st.
I get in the evening of the 30th.
I'll be there seeing patients at our THCF medical clinic.
Oh, very
Getting
good. Where's
more
that?
patients. It's right over at Southfield. In fact, we opened in Michigan on the day the law went into effect,
Smart
December
idea.
8, 2008. So we got a head start on all the other clinics. So we got a big jump start. So we got some busy clinics set up for Monday and Tuesday,
Oh, good.
right off of Northwest Highway and 12 Mile.
Oh, very good.
So is there anything you would want to tell people today in terms of reforming marijuana laws? What would you tell activists today?
Free the weed. I like Matt Abel's
Yeah.
language, the idea of ending marijuana prohibition. I
Yeah.
think what they did with the initiative was to mandate, if passed, the removal of marijuana from any of the statutes of the state of Michigan, where it's proscribing different things. It would not be able to proscribe marijuana use. And I think that would open the door for the kind of
Yeah, I think so
marijuana
too.
culture I would like to see.
That's what we're trying to do here in Oregon.
Yeah.
We're putting it on the ballot.
Oregon's been in the vanguard for a long time.
Yeah.
I saw Alaska. I remember when Alaska was legal in Alaska. And then
Yeah,
it's-
under the
then
Reagan
it's-
decision.
they
Then under
recriminalized.
Ronnie Reagan, they got the
What kind of dumb
the
shit
laws.
is that?
The teachers put out an initiative to recriminalize it. But then the courts
teachers.
threw it out, yeah. Well, under Bill Bennett, the
Oh,
first drug
that
czar,
guy.
they pushed that
Drug
through.
czar, yeah.
I didn't think we were supposed to have czars in this country. Czars
No,
are
well,
like
they aren't supposed to
autocratic
be
rulers.
like, Soviet
despotic,
Russia either,
yeah.
but it's like when they collapsed, America ate the heart of the enemy, and now they become just like them. It replaced the American heart. They don't have an American heart anymore, I don't think. I think this is just the coldest, ugliest, most non-caring society, way beyond any of my wildest imaginings how it could be here. I mean, all my life I've never really been able to subscribe to the social system that dominates here, but man, since Ronald Reagan, it's just like watching yourself swirl down
Yeah.
the toilet like a piece of
I think, the CIA, there's a big military coup in this country
Well,
back
yeah.
on November 22nd, 1963.
Well,
And
yeah.
most people don't realize it yet.
Well,
The
and
CIA
then it
took
was
over.
hardened when the CIA director took over the government personally in January of 1981 as the vice president of Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And they've been,
He was involved in the
I
assassination.
never saw too much air between Bill Clinton and the CIA. They seem to be pretty close.
They it seems
And my
both.
president now seems to be very close with the CIA. Bad choice. The CIA were the people that didn't happened to see the collapse of the Soviet Union coming,
Mhm.
although they've been watching it through a microscope for 50 years. What kind
Not
of
much
credential
intelligence
is that?
there.
You know, yeah, not much intelligence there. The ones that had the weapons of mass destruction, why, we should go to Iraq for 10 years, try to bomb them into the Stone Age. They were sure that they had a weapon of mass destruction because they sold it to them.
Mhm.
They didn't believe that they had dismantled them when they were supposed to. Evidently they did. Otherwise they would have found them.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and talking to us today.
Oh, I'm glad I had a chance. I've been wanting to do this for a year. I couldn't when you first invited me.
Mhm.
The idea of flying from Detroit to Portland, Oregon to do a TV show. I don't even watch TV.
Yeah.
It just had no attraction for me whatsoever. But then when I ended up coming out here to do some gigs, I thought, man, maybe I can do Paul's show now. So it worked out. Finally.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm glad it did. Thank you. All right.
Okay, real pleasure.
You travel safe.
Keep up the good work.
I will. We're, like I said, we're
I feel
just,
assured of that.
yeah, we're not going to give up.
No.